My name is Daniel Rivera, and if you had met me a few years ago, you would have probably described me as the quiet one in my family. The one who sat at the far end of the table during gatherings, smiling politely while everyone else seemed to dominate the conversation. You might have thought I was content with that role, maybe even preferred it. But the truth was, I was drowning in a sea of dismissiveness, overlooked by the very people who were supposed to uplift me. I grew up in a family that believed in appearances. How they loved appearances. My father, Carlos Rivera, was the type of man who measured his worth by the square footage of his home and the shine on his shoes. My mother, Alina, followed suit, ensuring every holiday photo looked picture perfect, even if the smiles cracked once the camera turned off. Then there were my two siblings, Veronica and Marcus. Veronica was the golden child. She was loud, ambitious, and beautiful, and my parents flaunted her every achievement like it was their own medal. She became a lawyer at 28 and married into a wealthy family. To my parents, she was proof that they had raised success stories. Marcus, on the other hand, was the rebel-turned entrepreneur. He had this natural charisma, this way of commanding attention. People adored him even when he stumbled, even when his businesses faltered. My parents always had a soft cushion for him to fall on. And then there was me, Daniel, the youngest. I wasn't a lawyer like Veronica, or a businessman like Marcus. I wasn't loud, flashy, or reckless. I was careful, thoughtful. Some would even say timid. My dream had always been different. I wanted to own a restaurant. It's not a massive chain or a 5-star place with Michelin stars. It's just a cozy, beautiful spot where people could sit down, share a meal, and feel like they were part of something. I worked my way up slowly. I studied culinary arts while working nights as a dishwasher, eventually moving to prep cook, then line cook. Every cut on my fingers, every late-night bus ride home reeking of onions and grease, it was all part of my journey. But my family, they didn't see it that way. To them, I was just the waiter, the cook, the one who hadn't done anything important. My father once said, "Daniel, when are you going to stop playing in kitchens and get a real job?" My mother, though kinder in tone, wasn't any better. "Sweetheart, cooking is nice, but don't you want more stability? You can't live like this forever." But I believed in myself even when they didn't. I scraped together every dollar saved until my fingers cramped from holding back expenses, and eventually I did it. I opened my own restaurant, all Sazon. Small place, warm and vibrant, tucked in a corner of our city where sunlight poured in through wide windows. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, and people loved it. Slowly, word spread. Customers came not just for the food, but for the atmosphere, for the way I greeted every person who walked in like they were family. You would think my family would be proud. But no, to them, it was just another cute little project. Veronica would laugh and say, "Oh, Danny, it's adorable that you have your cafe. It must be nice not having real stress." Marcus would pat me on the back with that infuriating smirk and go, "Restaurants come and go, bro. Don't worry. When it fails, I'll help you start something else." It burned me inside, but I stayed quiet. I let their words sting me because I thought maybe one day they'd see. Maybe if I worked hard enough, they'd finally acknowledge me. That day I thought would come during a family dinner. My parents decided to host a grand gathering at a high-end restaurant downtown. It wasn't unusual. They loved to throw dinners. That made them look important. This one, however, felt different. They insisted everyone dress formally, and my father went out of his way to invite distant relatives, family, friends, and business associates. I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe they'll finally recognize me. Maybe tonight my father will raise his glass and say, "This is my son Daniel, who owns a beautiful restaurant." I held on to that hope like it was oxygen. In the days leading up to the dinner, I worked tirelessly at Sol Y Sazon, making sure everything ran smoothly so I could take the night off without worry. My staff, my second family, encouraged me. "They're going to be proud of you. my sous chef Marisol told me. How could they not be? Look at what you've built. I smiled, but deep inside fear lingered. Because what if they didn't? What if this dinner was just another stage where I'd play the role of the invisible son? Still, I dressed my best that night. Okay. A tailored navy blue suit, polished shoes, and a quiet confidence I'd been nurturing for years. As I looked in the mirror before leaving, I whispered to myself, "You belong there, Daniel. Don't let them make you feel small." When I arrived at the restaurant, the air smelled of expensive wines and truffle oil. Waiters in crisp uniforms glided across the room carrying trays of hors d'oeuvres. Chandeliers sparkled above, casting golden light on the long table my family had claimed. Everyone was already there, laughing, glasses clinking. I walked in, heart pounding, a hopeful smile on my face. Veronica spotted me first. "Danny," she called out, her voice dripping with mock cheer. "You made it. We weren't sure if you'd be too busy flipping burgers." The table erupted in laughter. My cheeks burned, but I forced a smile. "Good to see you too, Veronica." My father barely looked up from his conversation with a family friend. My mother waved me over, her smile polite but strained, as though she was embarrassed by my presence. Marcus leaned back in his chair, eyes scanning me from head to toe. "Well, well, look at you, all dressed up. Did you borrow that suit from one of your waiters?" Again, laughter. And just like that, I felt it, the familiar sting of being dismissed, of being mocked by the people I loved most. But this time, something in me shifted. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about respect. This was about the countless nights I bled and sweated to build something real. And as I sat down at that table, enduring their snide remarks, I realized one thing. Tonight was going to be different. When the first round of wine arrived, I could tell from the glint in my father's eye that he was preparing to perform. Carlos Rivera didn't speak so much as stage monologues for captive audiences. He tugged at the cuff of his jacket, clinked his fork against the glass, and beamed at the table like a man who had personally invented civilization. "Family," he began, voice warm and practiced, "and dear friends, what a joy to be together in such a beautiful place." He gestured at the gilded sconces, the mirror-polished bar, the giant floral arrangement, breathing lilies and money. "Tonight, we celebrate success." He turned first to Veronica, kissing the air near her cheek. My brilliant daughter, who just closed a major case, he paused for effect, and who is, as always, a model of excellence. Applause rippled. Veronica basked, chin tilted, a gemstone in chandelier light. And my son, my father, went on, pivoting to Marcus, fresh off a new venture, a partnership with the Grant family visionary, Fearless. "You were made for big stages, son." More applause. Marcus lifted his glass like a Roman with a laurel wreath. He loved to act like even gravity checked with him first. Then my father's eyes slid to me. He smiled, that paternal smile he wore, like a necktie. "And Daniel has a charming cafe." He chuckled, and the table chuckled with him. "We all need a place for brunch, don't we?" I felt the laughter hit my skin like cold rain. Breathe, don't flinch. Don't give them the satisfaction. Saul Y. Saison is a full-service restaurant. "Dad," I said calmly, "we do dinner 4 nights a week now." Of course," he replied, waving off the correction with one of his glossy hands. "A lovely little place." He tilted his glass toward me, an afterthought. To all of us, we drank. The wine tasted like congratulations I wasn't allowed to have. Had a place card, but it wasn't at the head table. It wasn't even close. The mater d', a thin man with careful hair named Julian, led me to the very end. Chair 14. Beside the service station where servers slid past with plates stacked like ceramic moons. The seat had a view of the swinging kitchen. Door that puffed out steam and parsley. In a room catered to status, I had been placed as close to the back of house as possible without being asked to bus. "Sorry about the traffic here," Julian murmured, as if apologizing for a draft. Mr. Rivera requested this arrangement. Of course he had. My father loved symbolism. He also loved instructing professionals, as if the world was his front. "Office. Thanks," I said to Julian. "No worries." I took my seat and started counting breaths. Across the long table, Veronica's husband, Ethan, a venture capitalist who spoke in numbers the way some men spoke in prayers, leaned forward. "You know, Daniel, I was thinking about your restaurant." "I'm listening," I said, because I'd learned that people like Ethan believed mere attention was an audition. "You should do a pop-up in our building lobby," he said brightly. "Wednesday mornings, coffee and pastries. It could be cute." Cute! There it was again. "We do pop-ups sometimes," I replied. "But the menu is bigger now. We're doing Oksukan moles. Slow-braised short ribs with guajillo." Ethan blinked politely. Like I'd wandered off script. Right. Very artisanal. "I'm just saying office coffee is a growth channel. Captive audience you could scale." "Nothing says culinary soul like a captive audience," Marcus chimed in, smirking. "Don't be precious, Danny. Cash flow is cash flow." Veronica's laughter tinkled like a bell. "Let him have his fun, Mark. Not everyone can handle real steaks." My fork paused over the butter. "They don't know how many nights you closed down, hands raw, and went home to file invoices until 2 a.m. They don't know what it means to ask the bank for an extension and look your line cook in the eye and promise her payroll will hit. They don't know, and they don't care." A server named Noah arrived with amuse-bouches, smoked trout on rye crisps, topped with creme fraiche and tiny arrogant pearls of salmon roe. "For the table," he said, placing one in front of each person with a practiced smile. Marcus picked his up and turned it in the light. "This," he announced to no one in particular, "is how you plate." He angled it toward me. "You seeing this, Danny? Minimalist. Not one of your rustic heaps." My jaw flexed. "Different cuisines have different aesthetics. Sure," he said, biting in. "Hey, maybe you can talk to the chef here. Get some tips. Level up." Ethan snorted. "Don't be mean. I'm helping." Marcus replied the picture of innocence. "He can network. That's what we're here for." Across from me, Aunt Leela leaned in, her perfume like powdered sugar and lemons. "I went by your place last week, mijo. It was cozy." She said the last word with sympathy, as if she were describing a dog with a limp. "Thank you for coming," I said. "But why is it in that neighborhood?" she asked, sincerely baffled. "There's nothing there but auto shops and those hipsters with tattoos." "Rent is manageable," I replied. "And there's community. We're building something." "Ah," she said, nodding as if I'd confessed to a phase. "Well, make it quick. Market's turn." Dinner orders were taken. Veronica asked for the tasting menu as if it had been designed for her palate. Marcus ordered steak, rare, with a flourish. My father did something special with the sommelier, negotiating bottles like he was trading futures. When Noah reached me, I asked for the seasonal pasta with wild mushrooms and a side of charred broccolini. "Oh," my mother said, pinching the stem of her glass, "that sounds earthy. You should get something safer," my father added. "Carb-heavy foods are not ideal for your frame." It was an old trick, and it still found its mark. I set down my menu and looked at him. "I like mushrooms." "Let the boy like mushrooms," came Uncle Roberto's rumble. Good-natured, but not on my side. "He needs to put meat on his bones if he's going to lift those heavy pans." "Yes," Veronica said sweetly, tilting her glass toward me. "2 mushrooms." She sipped, eyes dancing. The servers moved with a choreography I recognized, 2 at the bar polishing glassware. 1 gliding toward table 6, 1 bending to reset silverware at table 9. It was the language of service, fluent and invisible. My people, the ones who carried nights on their backs and went home with their feet singing pain. When the first course arrived, watercress soup with a basil Oil drizzle, my father tapped his spoon against the bowl and cleared his throat. Again, a toast, he declared, to legacy. Here we go. When I look around this table, he said, gesturing toward the relatives, the business partners, the neighbors who were more donors than friends, I see continuity. I see our name carried forward with excellence. Veronica. He nodded solemnly. Your work gives our family prestige in the city. Okay? Mark Assure Ventures, your fearlessness. That's the Rivera spirit. He lifted his bowl to sip, then set it down. There was a beat where a good father might have found a third compliment. He looked at me, smiled as if he'd remembered some small kindness. And Daniel keeps busy. He has a place to be. There was laughter, the polite, muffled kind that covered discomfort with napkins. Something inside me tilted. Noah leaned in and poured water, eyes flicking from me to the fragile smile at the head of the table. He knew this dance. Every server knows when a table has a punchline. Veronica set her spoon down with a clink. Actually, she said, bright as a sparkler, I have an idea. She rested her chin in her hand, looking at me as if I were already a story she'd decided on. Ethan's company is hosting a gala in September. We're doing a seated dinner for 300. Big night. Maybe your restaurant could donate. Dessert? A delighted murmur went around the table. Oh, that's perfect, Aunt Lila said. Exposure. Great exposure, Ethan agreed. Good branding for you. The word clanged like a tin can in my ribs. I smiled carefully. We could bid to cater, I said. We do pastries, sure. But if you want quality at scale, Veronica waved her hand, slicing the air. No, we have a caterer. Can add a little flair. Maybe churros. People love churros. She said churros as if she were gifting me a syllable. Also, Marcus chimed in, everyone always forgets desserts, so it's a low-stakes place for you to play. My mother dabbed her lips with a napkin. That would be lovely, Daniel. You could practice for the holidays. Kai. I looked at my hands. They were steady. You have earned your steadiness, even at their table. We don't donate services, I said softly. We pay our people. If you want our work, I'll send a proposal. Silence. It spread like frost. Ethan cleared his throat. Or we could just go with Gelato Vita. Right? Veronica said quickly, eyes frostbitten. No big deal. My father chuckled to smooth it over. Artists, he said to Ethan and the men in suits. What are you going to do? Plates changed. The mushroom pasta arrived, glossy and fragrant, steam carrying notes of thyme and something like rain on slate. I twirled a forkful, lifted it, and before I could taste it, Marcus leaned over with mock concern. Careful, he warned. You might compare it to your food in Spiral. I took a bite. It was good. Not miraculous, not life-changing, but balanced and respectful. It's solid, I said. To no one, to myself. Veronica speared a scallop. If you bring your food to the gala, she mused, make it sophisticated. No cheesy stuff. Keep it minimal. I already said we're not donating, I replied more firmly. She blinked. You're really going to be like that? Like what? The temperature in my chest shifted like a professional. Oh, come on, Marcus said, leaning back. This is family. Most of us have carried you one way or another. Carried me. I repeated quietly, don't take the bait. Who carried me through empty Friday nights? Who carried me through the leak that destroyed our dry goods? Who carried me when the health inspector demanded documentation they'd misfiled? Now you're getting dramatic, Veronica said, rolling her eyes. It's just dessert. It's our work, I said, which is how my staff pays rent. My father set down his knife with a click. The table stilled. Daniel, he said, voice gentle in a way that never fooled me. No one is insulting your establishment. He frowned at the word as though it might stain his tongue. We're giving you a chance to be what's the word collaborative, part of the team. And if I say no, I replied, I'm not part of the team. He smiled, pitying. You make it hard. Noah arrived again, refilling wine, and my father caught his sleeve. "Young man," he said to the server, "could you bring another magnum of the Bordeaux and a separate check for the steak? That'll be for my son, the entrepreneur." Noah glanced at me, uncertain. "Of course, sir. The steak," I asked, bewildered. My father gestured at Marcus's plate. "It's had a few extras. It's family tradition. When one sibling is flush, he covers the other's appetite." There was laughter. Ethan knocked his knuckles on the wood. "A good one." "I didn't order the steak," I said. "It's details," my father said, dismissive. "You can afford it, surely. Successful men pay without counting." A pulse started at the base of my skull. "Don't use me to perform generosity I can't afford," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "I'll pay for my food." "Come on," Marcus coaxed, elbow out. "Don't be tight. Put it on your business card. It's all write-offs, right?" Ah, there it was, the family's favorite math. Everything is free if you pretend hard enough. "Actually," I said, "it isn't." "God, Danny," Veronica murmured. "You're grim." The next humiliation arrived disguised as logistics. The manager Amar approached with the gravitas of a diplomat. Tall, composed, eyes that missed nothing. I knew her from industry circles. We'd met once at a charity tasting. She recognized me. Too, there was the flicker, the internal O. "Mr. Rivera," she said to my father, smooth as satin, "just checking on your experience." "Shall we arrange the digestives?" My father smiled like a man at a ribbon cutting. "Perfect, Amara. Also, small issue with the halibut at C3, too much salt. Daniel will speak to your chef." Amara's eyes slid to me. I saw surprise, then a careful, professional blankness. "I beg your pardon? My son is in the restaurant business," my father explained, leaning back, pleased with his solution. "He speaks your language. He'll pop into the kitchen and explain." I stared at him. "I'm not going into their kitchen, Dad." He frowned, offended. "Don't be sensitive. You're always telling us how hard your work is. Here's a chance to be useful." Translate, Amara's smile didn't move. Only her knuckles tightened barely around her folder. "We're happy to correct anything on the floor," she said. "Evenly, our chef Gianni will refire the halibut to the guest's preference. No need to trouble your son." Veronica gave a theatrical sigh. "Everyone is so delicate tonight." "Let me help," I told Amara quietly, wanting to rescue us from this display, but also refusing what my father was trying to make me his emissary, his applied leverage. He shouldn't have made that request. "Thank you," she replied so faintly only I heard it. "We're fine." She left, and my father called after her. That's customer service, as though he'd taught it to her. The table resumed its low roar. Knives on china, laughter as currency. The hits kept coming, small and precise. A cousin asked if my place had real espresso or that drip stuff. A neighbor wondered if I accepted exposure as payment from influencers. Aunt Leela told a story about a friend's daughter who'd taken a cooking class in Tuscany. "You two would have so much in common," and then asked if I could get her into the back to see how it all works. Like there was a petting zoo behind the swinging door. "Daniel," my mother said sweetly, when dessert menus appeared, "why don't you pick something simple? Maybe ice cream. Remember how you used to love your little vanilla cones? So cute." I looked at my mother, at the way she arranged the world until it didn't bruise her. "I'm not a child," I said. She blinked, her smile freezing. "No one said you were." Noah brought espresso. My father signaled him with 2 fingers. "Could you take a photo of the family?" he asked, producing a phone one of his. The work one that made him feel important. "Course," Noah said. "Daniel," my father called, beckoning me to the aisle. For an instant, I felt a strange surge of relief. Maybe he wanted me in the middle for once. "Take the photo," he said, pressing the phone into my hand. I looked at the screen. The camera opened to the banquet of my family's smiles, their bodies angled toward my father, toward Veronica and Marcus, the axis of importance. There was a space at the front that looked like it had been left for a child, but I was to fill it with nothing. I lifted the phone, the image sharpening. My throat clicked. "Everyone say legacy," my father intoned. "Legacy," they chimed. Glowing, the photo snapped. I took another and another, my hands precise because precision was my only rebellion left. I handed the phone back and stepped away, the floor tilting. "That's a great one," my father said, scrolling. "We'll send it to the group." "Daniel, you'll get a copy." "Lucky me," I murmured. The checks arrived, discreet and damning. There were 3 of them, one for the main table, one for wines, and a smaller one minority itemized. And another line added in bold, at my father's instruction. "Supplemental, rebuy, rare. Just sign." My father said, passing me a pen. "Don't make a production." "I didn't eat the steak," I said. "Don't be petty," Veronica said lightly. "It's a good deed." "Put it on your business card," Marcus repeated, grinning. "Up. Do your magic write-off." The room narrowed around me. My skin felt too tight. The pen lay heavy in my hand. A wand that would turn dignity into debt. Every server who had ever slipped me a water during a slammed shift. Every cook who had taught me an old trick for coaxing. Sweetness from onions, every dishwasher who had winked at me when I was new, and every one of them seemed to be standing behind me, watching to see if I would buy acceptance with a signature. "No," I said. The table went still. My father's smile drained. "Excuse me? I'm not paying for someone else's steak to prove I belong here," I said, voice steady. "And I'm not going to stand up and go into a kitchen that isn't mine to fix a fish because you want to show off. I'll pay for what I ordered." "Daniel," my mother pleaded in a stage whisper, "don't embarrass us." I laughed, the sound scraping on its way out. "Embarrass you?" "You are being ungracious," my father said, voice cutting. "Small. This is why you don't get invited to real deals. You can't think beyond your plate." Something in me finally cut loose. "You don't invite me to deals because you don't see me," I said, the words dropping like stones. "You seat me by the service station because it's where you think I belong. You ask me to carry the check, pour the wine, take the photo, fix the food. You treat me like staff until you want to pretend I'm a son again." "Hey, Marcus," snapped, "don't you talk to Dad like that?" "Why not?" I asked evenly. "He talks to me like I'm a prop." My father stood, slow and theatrical. The table rustled. "You will apologize," he said, "and you will pay the bill. Or you will leave." There it was, the line drawn. I looked at the 3 bills, at the bolded steak, at my family's face, 6 expectant, annoyed, eager to be done with my stubbornness so the evening could return to its proper orbit. You are not a boy with flour on his hands anymore. You are a man who built something from heat and knives and faith. Decide what you're willing to license with your silence. "No," I said again, and this time the word landed on the table and stayed there. I took out my own card, personal, not business, and slid it beneath my check only. Noah looked at me, then at my father, then back. He nodded once, small, human. "Thank you," I told Noah, and meant more than the transaction. My father's eyes went cold. "Get out," he said softly. "You will not be family. You will not be here." For a dizziness of seconds, I thought of the versions of me that would have stayed, that would have grinned and made a joke and paid for a steak he didn't eat because that was cheaper than this kind of storm. I felt a flare of grief for those versions, then watched them recede like asterisk shores behind a leaving boat. "Gladly," I said. Chairs scraped. Someone gasped. Someone snorted. Aunt Leela murmured, "Ay, Dios," into her napkin. Veronica whispered, "Drama queen," and pouted at her reflection in a teaspoon. As I stood, Amara appeared at my elbow, as if conjured by the need for dignity. "Mr. Rivera," she said, not to my father, but to me, a quiet correction written. In her tone, "May I speak with you for a moment?" I nodded and followed her, the room's hum thinning behind me. We stepped toward the bar where the light was cooler and the air held the citric waft of lemon peels. She led me just far enough that we could speak without my father's shadow touching us. I'm sorry, she said gently. Professionalism. Dropping like a spare key into a dish. That was inappropriate. It wasn't your job to stop it, I replied. Thank you for trying, her mouth quirked. I know who you are, she said, then laughed at herself. I mean your place. Saul Y. Saison, my sous chef, Rafi stages there on his nights off. He says your braise could make a man write. Poetry against the ache in my chest, a small warmth. Rafi's talented, I said. Tell him he cuts onions like a surgeon. She glanced toward my family's fortress laughter and back at me. If you need a quiet exit, there's a side door near the coat room. We can settle your check here. I reached for my wallet, but she shook her head. Already handled. She said, Noah ran it. He's protective. I'll tip him heavy, I said. You don't have to, she replied, then added as if betraying a secret. But if you want to, he won't say no. We stood there a second, two professionals in a temple of display. And the thought rose in me like a clear note breaking through noise. You don't have to keep proving yourself to people who refuse to see you. It was asterisk followed by another, stranger. Thought that felt like a door I hadn't realized was there. You know this room? You know its bones. You could do something with this? Amara's gaze sharpened, as if she could hear the hinge turning. Are you okay? She asked. I will. I said, soon. When I turned back toward the table, my father was watching, eyes glittering with the self-righteousness of a man who thinks he has taught a lesson. Veronica had already returned to her story. Marcus was demonstrating how to cut a steak properly, because of course he was. I walked past them. No one spoke to me. That was fine. As I reached the coat room, I heard my father's voice float behind me. He'll come around. He always does. I smiled, small and real, at the coats lined up like sleeping animals. Not this time. I took my jacket, ran a hand over the lapel, and looked at my reflection in the dark glass of the door. Eyes storm-steadied. Face older than I felt and exactly as old as I was. I pushed the door open and stepped into the night, the city breathing, sirens and summer and possibility. On the sidewalk, under the restaurant's canopy, I paused. Amara's face flickered in the window as she moved back toward the Flora captain, returning to her ship. Above me, the restaurant's name gleamed in brass. I read it once, then twice, and felt a small, ruthless idea take root. It was not revenge, exactly. It was reclamation, a rearrangement, a way to leave that table not just by walking away from it, but by changing what it sat inside. I slipped my phone from my pocket and scrolled to a contact I had saved a month ago after a different night. A better one, a number given to me by a broker who'd eaten at Sol Y Sazon and said, if you ever want to expand, call me. I know. Owners who are tired. I stared at the screen and thought of my father's smile. Veronica's little tinkle of ridicule, Marcus's relentless smirk, my mother's soft, sharp voice. I thought of Noah's nod, of Rafi's swift hands. Amara standing like a pillar in the room my family had tried to turn into an arena. The phone rang once, twice. Lena Barrett, said the voice on the other end, crisp and curious. Barrett, Realty. Hi, Ms. Barrett, I said, the night air lifting the hair on my arms. This is Daniel Rivera. We met at Sol Y Saison. I cooked your mother's birthday. A beat, a warm laugh. The mole Negro genius, I remember. I took a breath and the words came smooth, like a sauce finding its silk. Do you still represent the owners of Maison du Parc? I glanced up at the glowing name above me. 'Cause I'd like to talk about a purchase. Behind me, through the glass, my family lifted their glasses again, celebrating a story that didn't include me. I turned away from them and faced. The street tonight? Lena asked. Tonight, I said. And as traffic hissed and the city flexed around me, I let the humiliation burn down to embers fuel I could hold in my hands without flinching, then started walking, not away, but toward what came next. I didn't sleep that night. After leaving the restaurant, I walked the streets with my jacket slung over my arm, replaying every word, every snicker, every look of dismissal. It was like someone had placed a mirror in front of me, and for the first time I truly saw what I had been doing all these years, begging for recognition from people who had no intention of giving it. And yet I didn't feel defeated. No, I felt awake. By the time I got home, my mind was already working, gears turning faster than I could keep up with. I sat at my kitchen table, pulled out a notepad, and wrote 2 words at the top: Maison du Parc. That was the name of the restaurant where my family had humiliated me. A landmark. For decades, it had been the place for high society to dine. But I had heard whispers in the culinary circle that the owners were tired, that the management had become sloppy, that debt was pressing in. That's why Lena Barrett, the broker, had given me her card in the first place. When I called her from the sidewalk, it wasn't just anger speaking, it was opportunity knocking, and for once I wasn't going to ignore it. The next morning, I met Lena at her office. She was a sharp woman in her 40s, hair in a sleek bob, eyes that flickered, like they could see both problems and profits at the same time. "You weren't kidding last night," she said as I sat across from her desk. "Most people call me at 10 in the morning, not 10 at night." "I'm not most people," I told her. She leaned back, intrigued. "So Daniel, tell me why. You want Maison du Parc." I exhaled, hands folded on my knees. "Because that restaurant represents everything my family worships: status, wealth, appearances. They use places like that as stages to perform their superiority. And last night, they used that stage to humiliate me." Lena arched an eyebrow. "Revenge purchase." "Not just revenge," I corrected. "I know the place. I know its flaws. I know how to run a kitchen. I have the team to breathe life back into it. My restaurant is successful, but small. This is my chance to scale up, not with gimmicks, but with real vision." She studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I like you. You're not talking like a hobbyist. You're talking like an owner." She slid a file across the desk. "The current owners are indeed looking to sell. They've been struggling to keep up with debt. Price is negotiable." I opened the file and saw the numbers. They were intimidating. Yes, but not impossible, especially not with Attraction's soul why Cezanne had been building. "I'll need financing," I admitted. "Course," Lena said smoothly. "But you've got something most buyers don't: an existing restaurant with good press and a loyal customer base. That makes banks listen." That was when the idea crystallized in my mind. What if the very place where my family mocked me became mine? What if, the next time they tried to throw one of their grand dinners, they had to do it under my roof? The thought sent a thrill down my spine. Over the next few weeks, I worked harder than I ever had in my life. By day, I ran Sol Cezanne. By night, I met with lenders, reviewed contracts, and toured Maison du Parc with Lena, the first time I walked through it with the owner. A weary man named Gerard. I could see both the decay and the potential. The carpets were worn, the chandeliers dulled, the kitchen equipment dated, but the bones were strong. High ceilings, beautiful dining space, a wine cellar that could make any sommelier weep with joy. It used to be the crown jewel of the city. Gerard sighed as we stood in the dining room. "But my wife and I are too old to keep up with it. We need someone with new energy." He looked at me then, a flicker of hope in his eyes. "You might be the one." I nodded, trying to hide the fire in my chest. "I will be." Still, doubts crept in late at night. Could I really pull this off? Would my staff follow me? Customers. One night after closing Sol Cezanne, I sat with Marisol, my sous chef and confidant. We shared a bottle of mezcal at one of the empty tables, the smell of roasted chiles still clinging to the air. "Marisol," I said, staring at the glass in my hand, "what if I'm crazy? What if I'm about to destroy everything we built by reaching too high?" She smirked and leaned back. "Daniel, you've been crazy since the day you told me. You wanted to turn a rundown corner cafe into a restaurant. But you did it. And you know what? You're not just building a business, you're building respect. That's what they can't take from you. Her words settled something in me. Yes, respect. That was the word my family had denied me for years, but I would claim it myself. By the end of the month, the deal was done. With Lena's help, I secured the financing and signed the papers. Maison du Parc was mine. The first time I held the keys in my hand, standing outside that gilded doorway, where I had once been humiliated, I felt something shift inside me. The boy who had begged for acknowledgement was gone. The man holding those keys had taken his future into his own hands. I didn't announce it to my family. Not yet. I wanted the reveal to be perfect. Instead, I poured myself into renovations. I brought my team from Solway Saison, hired new staff, replaced the carpets, polished the chandeliers until they sparkled like new stars. We upgraded the kitchen, modernized the menu, and infused it with the soul I had poured into my first restaurant. No more soulless status symbols. This was going to be a place where fine dining met heart, where every dish told a story. When we finally reopened, the buzz was electric. Food critics came, influencers flocked, and the city whispered about how the Rivera boy, the quiet one, had transformed an old institution into something fresh. Something alive. And yet my family still hadn't noticed. They lived in their bubble of self-importance, blind to the fact that the ground beneath them was shifting. Until the invitation arrived. It was my mother's idea, of course. She called me one evening, her voice sweet as syrup. "Daniel, darling," she said, "your father and I are hosting another family dinner next month. Very important people. We'll be their investors, partners, even the mayor. Would like you to come." I almost laughed out loud. The same dinner where they'd humiliated me weeks ago. More pompous? Where is it? I asked, biting my tongue too. Keep the smile out of my voice. "Oh, at Maison du Parc," she said casually, as if she had chosen the location herself. "You know it, don't you? It's the most prestigious restaurant in the city. Everyone will be so impressed." I closed my eyes, savoring the moment. "Yes, Mother," I said quietly. "I know it very well." "Good," she replied. "Do be on time this time, and please wear something nice, as if I were a child again." When I hung up, I leaned back in my chair and let out a laugh that startled even me. It wasn't bitter, it was triumphant. The stage was set. My family had chosen the very place I now owned for their performance. They were walking straight into my house without even knowing it. The night of the dinner arrived like a storm I had been preparing for all my life. I didn't sit at the table this time. No, I stood in the back, dressed in my chef's whites, watching as my family filed in with their usual grandeur. Veronica in a glittering dress, Marcus in a tailored suit, my father holding court with a group of investors, my mother smiling like she owned the room. They didn't even notice me at first. To them, I was just another chef, another face in the background, until Amara, now my general manager, walked to the head of the table. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," she said with professional poise. "Welcome to Maison du Parc. Tonight, we have a special host, the new owner of this restaurant." The room buzzed with curiosity. My father adjusted his tie, expecting some name he knew, some wealthy businessman he could shake hands with. And then Amara gestured to me. "Please welcome Mr. Daniel Rivera." I stepped forward. The silence that followed was delicious. Families, faces, froze shock, disbelief, and, on my father's, a flicker of something he'd never allowed himself to feel toward me. Fear. I looked at them, one by one, letting the weight of the moment settle. "Welcome to my restaurant," I said, voicesteady.com, and full of the power they had denied me all my life. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The room was held together by the soft hiss of the espresso machine and the far-off clink of glass on glass. My father's smile had frozen exactly where it always lived, half a centimeter above sincerity. Veronica's mouth hung open just enough for the diamond on her lip gloss to catch the chandelier light. Marcus blinked like he'd been slapped by the concept of gravity. I didn't rush to fill the silence. Let it bloom. A living thing that patted down the long table and sniffed at every face. It wasn't cruelty. It was the first quiet I'd ever been allowed to own in front of them. "Daniel," my mother said at last, a flutter at the edge of my name, like a bird realizing the window was glass. "What? What is this?" I said, calm and even as Mazandu Park. I gestured to the room, and tonight, it's also my house. Thank you for coming. A soft current of laughter broke around the table, polite, relieved, the kind that doesn't know yet where it should sit. My father rose halfway, hand extended as if he'd planned the reveal and I was simply playing my cue. "Congratulations," he announced, voice pitched to reach the neighboring tables. "A proud moment for the Rivera family." "My son has Mr. Rivera," Amara said gently, peering beside him like a law of nature. "If you don't mind, the owner will make the announcement." She was looking at me, not him. It was a tiny thing, the axis of a sentence, but I felt it like a key turning. My father's hand paused in the air, then withdrew. He sat, he smiled, teeth precise. Of course. I stepped closer to the long table, the same length, the same gleam as the one from the night they'd staged my humiliation. Only this time, I stood at its head. I rested my palms on the linen, felt the firmness beneath. Would work. Wait. "Welcome," I said. When we reopened Mizandu Park, we made a promise that fine dining would feel like care, not like a costume. That the people who make your evening possible, the cooks, the servers, the dishwashers, the managers, would be respected, paid, and protected. That our food would have both technique and soul. I let my eyes land on my father. "So tonight, we have some house traditions to share." I nodded to Amara. She lifted a hand, and the room obeyed her ballet we'd practiced. The lights softened. A quiet chord hummed from the small string trio near the bar. Servers fanned out, each with a small envelope on a silver tray. They placed one before every guest at my family's table. "What is this?" Veronica asked, fingers already on the flap. "A welcome," I said, "and an apology of sorts." Her eyes flicked up, suspicious. "For what?" "For the last time I ate at this table," I said. "When I was told to take the family photo when I was seated by the service station. When I was asked to pay for a steak, I didn't order and go into a stranger's kitchen to fix a fish to prove my worth." I smiled, small, not unkind. "Tonight, I'm making amends to my staff for having let that happen in their home." My father's mouth opened. "Oh, don't be ridiculous. Open the envelopes," I said, still smiling. Paper whispered. Hands moved. Inside each envelope was a card-heavy stock, embossed with the Maison du Parc crescent, a small brass pin in the shape of a hand and a flame. Our mark for the hands and heat fund. The employee education and emergency fund I had. Set up the week we took ownership. On the card, in elegant script, was a line. "Tonight's dinner is covered in full by the owner's table. On one condition, each guest signs the pledge to match the cost of their meal as a donation to the Hands and Heat Fund." A second line below. "Its refusal is acceptable but requires receipting at the service station and a simplified menu." A ripple rolled through the table, some laughter. A few O's, someone soft, delighted, well played. At the far end, a city councilwoman I recognized from the news grinned at her partner. "I like this guy," she murmured. Not quite. Quietly enough for the room heaving with attention. My father barked a laugh that had more teeth than music. "You can't require donations. I can offer house traditions," I said mildly. "No one is required to do anything. We're in hospitality, not coercion. But we do name the values our food sits on." Veronica's eyes narrowed. "This is tacky. Tacky is asking your kid to bring free churros to a gala that will spend 50 grand on flowers." I said, and the table made that involuntary sound groups make when the plate they were holding suddenly becomes too hot. Aunt Leela fanned herself. with the pledge card, Dios mio. Marcus chuckled, tried to reclaim the rhythm. Okay, I'll play. He uncapped a pen with a flourish. Where do I sign to buy the kitchen? A set of knives? Bottom right, Amara said, already at his elbow with a leather portfolio. He scribbled. There, he announced. Premium tip for the peasants. Amara's gaze slid over him like glass. She gave him nothing to bite. Instead, she turned to Noah now in a dark vest with the Mason crest, face composed in that still way servers wear like armor. Collect as they're ready, please, she said. Course, Noah replied, meeting my eye. A flash of a Grinkwig conspiratorial. I watched as a few guests signed immediately, smiling, slipping the pins on their lapels. Money to them? Was gratitude a way to say yes to the people refilling their glasses and cooking their halibut to the line between shimmer and silk? They got it. Others hesitated. They weren't unkind. They were simply unused to a mirror that didn't flatter. My father flipped the card over as if the back would change the rules. We are guests, he said. You don't charge guests too. You are going to charge me for a steak I didn't eat. I said, still soft, think of this as balancing the checkbook. He bristled, fingers whitening around the stem of his glass. This is beneath you, on the contrary, I said. This is exactly where I stand on the floor with my people. Across the table, the mayor, yes, it was the mayor. And I could feel my father's attention magnetized toward her like filings. To a lodestone lifted her pen. I think it's brilliant, she said. My office has been pushing fair wage certifications. You've turned it into a ritual. Rituals matter. Thank you, Mayor Flores, I said. You'll find the QR code for the fund on the back. My father's eyes flitted to her, recalculating. Legacy is a public sport, and he hated to lose the game in front of a referee. He set down his glass. Fine, he said, like a man agreeing to an inconvenience to avoid a greater one. I'll sign. He reached for the pen. Before you do, I said, and now I let a sliver of steel into my voice. There's one more tradition. He paused. What now? I nodded to Amara again. She lifted another hand. The doors to the kitchen swung, and my crew emerged, not carrying food, not yet, but walking, just walking. In their coats and aprons, knives sheathed, hands clean. Rafi with his careful shoulders, Marisol with a line of sunburn over her collarbone from the farmer's market. Noah without a tray. They lined the edge of the dining room, flanking the long table like the guard of honor they were. A hush. The trio near the bar stopped playing. I talked to the room, but I was speaking to my family. In this house, before anyone eats, we acknowledge the people whose labor makes the meal possible. We call their names. We look at their faces. We understand that hospitality is not magic. It is work. I turned and began. Amara Navarro, General Manager, Rafi Caresi, Sous Chef, Marisol Reyes, Executive Sous, Noah Bell, Senior Server, Tamika Jones, Pastry Chef, Bruno Machado, Dish. I paused and corrected myself. The way we'd promised in our own back house. Meeting Steward. And many more, in the kitchen and behind this wall, whose names will be listed on your menus. People clapped, at first tentatively, then fuller, when they realized that, yes, that was the point. The room warmed, the way a human voice warms when it stops pretending to be silk and allows itself to be skin. I looked at my father last. You told me once, I said that what I did wasn't a real job, that I should get one, she said, that at a table like this, his jaw flexed. Daniel, so here we all are, I said, and my voice neither rose nor trembled. Here we are, in a room full of real jobs feeding real people in a real city that knows the difference between power and show. Then I smiled. Now, shall we eat? The first course landed like a punctuation mark. Servers, feathered plates. Onto linen and a muse of charred baby leeks with almond crema and a lacing of anchovy oil. A riff on a peasant dish my grandmother used to make when the pantry was thin and the garden was a rumor of green. I'd put it here deliberately. It tasted like humility and skill at the same time. Veronica speared a leak and chewed like it owed her money. "It's rustic," she said. "It's honest," I replied. The second course followed, halibut. Yes, because I am petty and also practically, so carefully the flakes parted like good news. Set over braised fennel with orange zest and a sauce that took 3 days and a portion of my life I was happy to trade. Ethan, the venture capitalist, stared at his plate, then at me, then at his plate again. He took a bite. His eyebrows rose. "This is," he began, "not a pop-up." I finished for him and he laughed, genuine this time. Hands raised, not a pop-up. He agreed. Wine flowed. Conversation loosened. The pledge cards made their way back, signed, unsigned, argued over. A cousin whispered to another cousin that she'd been saving for a bag and now it was going to a dishwasher certification exam. And then she laughed at herself and said good and tucked the pin on her dress. My father hadn't signed. Yet he'd placed the card upside down, as if the words could not exist if he couldn't see them. I didn't press. This was not about breaking him open with a pry bar. It was about building a room he couldn't ignore. Between courses, I moved through the space not to preen, but to be available. People stopped me. A food critic I recognized from the paper asked how we got the ancho into the ash. A retired teacher told me she'd eaten here with her wife when they were young and couldn't afford entrees, so they split a salad and 2 sides. And that tonight tasted like forgiveness for both of them. I listened. It was my favorite part of the job. When I returned to the long table, Marcus stood, blocking my chair if I'd planned to sit, which I hadn't. His face was a grinning mask. "So, owner," he said, loud enough for several tables to hear, "do we get a family discount?" I smiled back. "You're eating for free if you sign. It's better than a discount." He waggled the pen he'd used earlier. "I already did my part. Chemp." "That's good," I said. "The fun, thanks you." He stepped closer, lowered his voice. "Cute trick. You got your applause. But you and I both know what matters is capital. Who are your partners? You didn't do this alone." "No one does anything alone," I said. "Not even you, though you keep pretending." He bristled. "Are you implying I'm saying the grants aren't going to float you the way you think?" Said gentler than he deserved. "You're over-leveraged, Mark. You talk loud because the numbers don't." He went still. "How would you? The same way you know everything about me." I said, "People talk." He searched my face, looking for a bluff. He didn't find one. He leaned in, breath bright with Bordeaux. "Enjoy your moment," he hissed. "You're still the kid with onion hands." "Onion hands built this room," I said. "Go sit down." His smile cracked, microscopic but there. He slouched back into his chair, flicked his napkin as if he'd meant to sit anyway. The table's conversation resumed at a higher pitch than before, noise chasing discomfort away. Veronica slipped into the space he'd vacated, her perfume crisp as new money. "Listen," she said, low, urgent. "About the gala? I won't donate churros," I said. She scowled. "It's not about churros. Our caterer dropped us. If you do the dinner paid, obviously, I can get you in front of 3 firms. Real clients, real expansion." There was a time I would have begged for the introduction. I saw that Daniel hungry, aching, standing just behind her shoulder, hopeful as a puppy. I thanked him silently for getting me here and then told him to rest. "We can talk," I said, "after you send my team a proper RFP and we respond. With a bid and you pick us on merit, no side deals, no family rates. If we win, we'll cook like the city's eating with you for the first time." She folded her arms. "So this is who you are now." "This is who I was then," I said. "You just didn't look." Dessert came like a coda. Tamika's tres leches semifredo with burnt sugar lace and a scatter of salt, she insisted. On measuring by feel because she said sadness has a salinity and she knows when the room needs less of it. People moaned. Someone actually clapped their spoon against their palm in appreciation. I caught Tamika's eye through the pass. She lifted her chin, which is how we say I love you when our hands are full of fire. When the final plates were Clear Tamara approached the head of the table with a leather folder. She opened it, revealing not a stack of checks, but a single sheet with a house crest. On evenings hosted by the owner's table, she said, voice pitched to the room, we close with a presentation. Mr. Rivera. I stepped forward again. My father stared at me, his pledge card still untouched. Stare had passed through. Disbelief into something thornier. He was looking for the lever that had always moved me. I didn't give him one. Tonight, I said, we raised enough to fully fund certifications, emergency rent, and tuition for every back-of-house employee who requested support this quarter. I glanced at the number Amara had penciled in the corner. Felt my throat thicken. We also have enough to expand the fund to include family care, childcare during double shifts, home nursing during injuries. Applause rose, real and bright, not performative. Noah's gaze went glassy for a second. Then he made a joke at the server station to shake it off. Rafi blew out a breath and pretended he hadn't been holding it. And I said, because we believe in legacy that isn't just a word you say in a toast. We'll be placing a plaque on the wall outside the kitchen tomorrow morning. It will list by first name the people whose matching gifts made tonight. Possible. A soft, delighted O moved through the crowd. People love to be seen when being seen costs them the right thing. My father's head tilted. He understood. It wasn't a threat. It was an invitation to show up publicly in a way that would live here longer than a magnum of Bordeaux. I turned to him, finally giving him the dignity of a direct ask. Carlos, I said, using his first name the way he used to insist we call other men by theirs. As if respect were a currency you had to prove you could afford, would you like your name to be on the plaque? The table held its breath. He looked at the card, at the pen, at the mayor beside him, at the faces up and down the linen neighbors' partners, people he'd spent years impressing. He looked, lastly, at me. For a second, I saw not the man who measured his love in invoices, but the boy. He must have been hungry. Poor, taught to worship rooms like this because hunger is cruel and makes altars out of tables. He picked up the pen, he signed. He did not look at me when he handed the card to Amara. He looked at his hands as if they were new. Thank you, I said, and meant it. Not as a son to a father, but as an owner to a guest who had finally participated in the house. Veronica signed, chin tilted as if daring the pen to dare her back. Ethan signed icily, then told Noah he hoped Noah would get his sommelier sat, and when Noah said he wasn't a wine guy, Ethan said, then whatever you want, and put an extra line through the number. Aunt Leela signed with a flourish and said she would pray for the fund and also buy a cake next week. Marcus hovered, then scrawled something performative and loud that would still spend the same when it hit the fund's account. The room exhaled. People stood. Coats were called. The trio resumed a gentle rhythm that sounded like knights turning over and deciding to be kind. Guests drifted toward me with congratulations. A few business cards appeared in my hand, like doves at a magic show, but they didn't feel like lifelines. Anymore, they felt like options. Like doors I could open if I wanted to, not because I needed someone else's hallway to stand in. My family lingered. Of course they did. Their exits were always extended, a way to hold the room a little longer. My mother came to me first, hands folded like she was holding a small bird. Up close, I saw the tiny lines around her eyes I hadn't noticed when I'd been busy counting reasons not to cry. You should have told me, she said, not a scold, more an ache. I don't know what I would have done. But I would have wanted to be there. I wanted to be here, I said. And it was the truest sentence I'd ever offered her, in this moment. Not in a story you would soften. Her mouth trembled. She reached up, hesitated, then smoothed the thread on my lapel as if I were still. Little and headed for picture day. You are very brave, she whispered. I was very tired, I said. Bravery and tired look the same sometimes. She nodded. Something inside her was knitting in silence. Veronica approached next, jaw set. Fine, she said without preamble. Send the RFP checklist. We'll do it your way. If you win, you cook. If not, we won't pretend. Deal, I said. She searched my face for a crack, didn't find one, and smiled despite herself. That halibut, she said grudgingly. You could charge double. I'd rather fund daycare, I said. She rolled her eyes, but the corner of her mouth betrayed her. You're insufferable. I touched 2 fingers to my chest. A little bow. Consistency. Marcus clapped my shoulder too hard and too bright. Look at you, he said. Buying buildings to get back at Dad. Textbook little brother move. I let the hand sit there a beat. I didn't buy it to get back at anyone, I said. I bought it because I could make it good. Sure, he drawled. We'll see how long that lasts. It will outlast your next pivot, I said, but I said it kindly, and he scowled because kindness is harder to punch than spite. My father was last. He didn't come to me so much as I found myself beside him. The way 2 planets eventually draw close because math says they must. He stared at the plaque template Amara had left on the host, stand just a mock-up blank. Names like Open Hands. You embarrassed me, he said softly. I gave you a chance to be generous, I replied. In public, so it counted. He breathed out, something old and sour. You think very little of me. I think very little of the way you think of me, I said. There's a difference. He nodded, small, the way men do when they've hit a wall and aren't ready to name it a wall. The mayor, he said, because he could always find the political thread. Likes you. I like her too, I said. She treats the busser and the billionaire the same when she's at a table. It's a skill. He looked at me. Then, straight, without the armor, you did this. It's the right way? Yes, I said simply. He opened his mouth, closed it. The words he reached for had always been the same, and tonight they weren't enough. He settled for something smaller, which landed like a miracle. I'll be back, he said. Not a threat, more a promise he wasn't sure how to keep. A customer, I nodded. As a guest, I corrected, gentle. He inclined his head, accepting the house language. He offered his hand. I took it. It was not absolution. It was a receipt. They drifted out then, into the velvet night, into cars. That smelled like leather and the radio. The room exhaled again, and then the work after the performance began, breaking down the floor, caching the glasses, counting the tips, logging the donations, heat blooming in the dish pit like a second sun. I walked back to the kitchen. The crew was loud, the way crews are when adrenaline meets relief, everyone talking at once. Tomika had a towel over her shoulder like a sash. Rafi was explaining to no one how to hold the knife to split a shallot at speed, the blade flashing in. Safe, practiced arcs. Marisol leaned against the walk-in like a victorious general. You were disgusting up there, she told me, which in her mouth meant perfect. I almost cried, and then I almost threw a pan because I was crying. I laughed, surprised by how light it sounded. Eat something, I said, pulling a tray of staff meal from the Lobeyeras con palo I'd made at 4 that morning. Because when your house is about to test itself, you feed your soldiers. We ate with spoons and hands and low, sincere groans. Food tastes better when it's yours, and also when you almost lost the right to cook it. When the last guest was gone and the lights were at their softest hum and the dish pit had stopped singing. I went alone to the door where I'd stood weeks ago with keys in my hand and humiliation cooling into intention. The brass letters shone back at me, and for the first time, I didn't read them as a place I had to earn. I read them as a promise I had chosen to keep. Behind me, the crew cheered at some small victory in the back-a-spoon trick, a joke that finally broke. I smiled. I thought of that other table, the one from the long-ago night, the steak I didn't eat. The photograph I took from the wrong side of the lens? I thought of my mother's fingers on my lapel, of my father's pen scratching his name where he'd never put it before. Ah, of Veronica calculating and then choosing fairness because it was the only currency that would spend. Here, of Marcus trying to bruise a place that had learned to heal. I closed my eyes. Justice didn't feel like thunder. It felt like finally holding still. When I opened them, Amara was there. Hands in her pockets, posture loose with the kind of tired that equals earned. "You did it," she said. "We did." I corrected. She tipped her head. "Tomorrow's going to be insane." "I know," I said. "And the next day and the next." She said, and her smile was a blade and a bomb at once. I was getting bored. We stood in the doorway for a breath, watching the city move. The taxis yawning. The night cooks from other houses, walking home with their knives tucked under their coats like saints' bones. "Go home," I told her. "Sleep." "You too," she said, owner. I turned the key in the lock and felt the mechanism settle. Click home. As I walked down the steps, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, then another. Word had traveled. Of course it had. The city is a mouth, and tonight it was finally saying my name without swallowing it whole. I tucked the phone away. The air was cool and tasted faintly of oranges. From the fennel I'd zested too much of and not enough, because that's how cooking works and how life does too. I let the night sit on my skin. I let it tell me the truth. I wasn't done. This wasn't the end of anything. It was the start of a story I would have to keep cooking every night, with the same hands they once called small. And tomorrow would be the part where you put the knife down and pick up the broom. Where you choose who gets to sit. At your table, where you write the next menu from scratch, not out of spite, but out of love. But before tomorrow, there would be sleep. There would be, at last, peace. I headed home with the city humming like a stove, cooling after service. The heat still in it. The promise of it ready to rise again. I didn't wake up the next morning to an alarm. I woke up to sunlight spilling through my curtains, warm and gentle, as if the world itself had decided I had earned the right to rest. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was chasing something. Didn't feel like I was holding my breath, waiting for my family to finally hand me the approval I had begged for since I was a boy. Instead, I felt free. Free. But freedom, I've learned, doesn't arrive all at once. It doesn't burst through the door like an uninvited guest. It seeps in, quiet and patient. After you've fought through enough nights of doubt, after you've chosen yourself again and again, even when no one else does. That morning, I walked into Maison du Parc, my restaurant. My house before the doors opened. The place was still asleep. The chandeliers hung quiet. The chairs stood stacked. The polished floor reflected my footsteps back at me. I breathed it in, that sacred hush of a dining room before the storm of service. And in that silence, I thought about everything that had happened. Blood, they say, is thicker than water. But I've learned something different. Blood can drown you just as easily as it can keep you alive. For years, I tried to earn love from people who measured me by the wrong scale. My father, who thought success was only real if it wore a suit. My mother, who hid her disappointment behind fragile smiles. Veronica and Marcus, who mocked the very thing that gave my life meaning. And then there was the other family, the one I built. Marisol, who believed in me when I was just a line cook with calloused hands. Rafi, who spent his nights practicing knife cuts just to be ready for our menu. Tamika, who poured her soul into sugar and flour until dessert became poetry. Noah, who carried trays like a warrior and reminded me that dignity could live even in silence. They were the family I chose, the family that chose me back. That realization was more satisfying than any revenge I could have planned. Because in the end, justice wasn't just about humbling my parents or silencing my siblings. Justice was standing tall in my own skin, surrounded by people who saw me not as the forgotten youngest son. Not as the cook, but as a man who built something real with his own two hands. I won't lie. Part of me had wanted to destroy my father that night, to strip him bare in front of the mayor, the investors, the neighbors. to force him to taste the bitterness he had spoon-fed me my whole life. But when he finally picked up that pen, when he signed his name to a fund that would help the very people he once dismissed as not real, I saw something I hadn't expected. A crack. For the first time, he didn't hold all the power. The first time, he couldn't dismiss me with a smirk or a wave of his hand. He had to face me as an equal, maybe even as something more. And I realized that was enough. I didn't need him to apologize. I didn't need him to say the words, "I'm proud of you." The look in his eyes, the one he tried to hide, the one that admitted he had underestimated me, was all the closure I needed. I stopped being his boy that night. I became my own man. Some people think revenge is about fire and fury, about shouting, pointing, tearing someone down until there's nothing left. But that's not true. The most powerful revenge is quiet. It's dignity. It's walking away without bitterness. Because you finally understand you don't need what they refuse to give. When I left that dinner weeks ago, humiliated and small, I thought the only way to heal was to make them pay. But now I see it differently. Healing wasn't about punishing them. Healing was about proving to myself that I was always enough. Buying the restaurant wasn't just a business move, it was symbolic. It was me saying, "You can't keep me at the service station anymore. I built the table now, I decide who sits at it." And the truth, that mattered more than their laughter ever did. That night wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of something larger than I ever imagined. The press picked up on the story of the young chef who revived Maison du Parc. Critics praised not just the food, but the culture, the way we honored our staff, the way every guest left knowing the names of the people behind the meal. Customers came not just to eat, but to belong. Opportunities opened. Investors wanted to talk. Veronica's gala request turned into a legitimate proposal, one we actually bid on. Whether we win or not doesn't matter, because now they understand we are not cute or small. We are professionals. We are worthy. And me, I finally stopped living for scraps of validation. I stopped shrinking myself to fit inside the box my family built. I am no longer the boy who sat at the end of the table, ignored and mocked. I am the man who owns the table. The man who chooses who gets to sit, who gets to eat, who gets to be remembered. When I think back to that night, the first dinner, the humiliation, the cruel laughter, I don't feel anger anymore. I feel gratitude. Because without that moment, I might still be chasing my father's approval like a starving dog waiting for a bone. I might never have realized that I already had everything I needed. The laughter, the steak I didn't order, the photo I wasn't in, it all pushed me toward the fire I didn't know I carried inside. Now I live with a new mantra. One I whisper to myself every time doubt tries to creep in: respect is not given. Respect is built. And once you build it, no one can take it away. So if you ever find yourself at a table where your voice is drowned out, where your worth is mocked, where you're asked to pay for a meal you didn't eat, remember this: you don't have to stay seated. You don't have to beg for a chair. You can walk out. You can build your own table. And when the time is right, the same people who laughed at you may one day find themselves sitting at it, looking up at you with eyes they can no longer close. That, I promise you, is the sweetest justice of all. And so, my story ends where it began, at a family dinner. Only this time, the family was chosen, the laughter was shared, and the respect was real. I didn't just leave with the restaurant. I left with myself, and that was everything. And that was my story. A story of betrayal, humiliation, and the justice I finally claimed. If this story moved you, don't forget to hit the like button. It lets me know you want more stories like this. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next tale of family drama, betrayal, and sweet revenge. And now I want to hear from you. What would you have done in my place? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and your stories inspire the next ones I tell. Until next time. Remember, in every betrayal, there is always a lesson, and in every ending, there is justice waiting to be served.